Welcome to Canadian Innovators, the show that celebrates innovation, entrepreneurs, and the Canadian spirit. I'm Jocelyn Bamford, and every week we introduce a new entrepreneur or expert on the economy to tell their stories and unpack the challenges of keeping jobs in Canada, as well as to discuss potential solutions for job growth and prosperity. After more than 2 years of some of the longest and harshest lockdowns in North America, Ontario has finally opened up. The mask mandate has been lifted, but the COVID hangover still lingers. Many people are afraid to travel, and many do not want to part with their masks after 2+ years of mask mandates. All of this has had a terrible toll on the psychological outlook of many Ontarios, as well as a devastating impact on the economy. Joining me to discuss is Mayor of Niagara Falls, Jim Diodati, and Editor-in-Chief of the Toronto Sun, Adrienne Batra. Welcome to the program, folks.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Adrienne, I'm going to start with you. Let's discuss the COVID hangover. What are you seeing out there? And I'm not seeing this as something that a couple of aspirins is going to cure.
Or a couple of bottles of wine won't cure either. Well, I think that this is going to be a long hangover. We may physically see, some people have decided that they're not going to wear their masks anymore. We've seen the businesses are opening up. People are traveling, maybe not in the droves that they used to, but certainly the volume is increasing. So we see things physically going on around us that demonstrate we are getting out of this. The vaccinations have worked. They've helped the booster shots continue to get put in people's arms. And there's always going to be the necessity to keep up with those. But where we don't have a good handle on what the long-term impact of the lockdowns and the pandemic are those sort of silent issues. The thousands upon thousands of canceled surgeries, what impact this is going to have on children, some of which have grown up in the pandemic and know nothing other than wearing masks and isolating and distancing and having that awkward sort of social interaction. That's what they've only thing that they've learned. And let alone the financial impact, the eye-watering spending that took place over the last 2+ years. I don't think that we have quite the appreciation for just how much that is and the long-term impact of that. So I know there's a lot to unpack there, but those are the big things that I see as where we stand right now.
So let's bring in the mayor, Mayor Jim Diodati. I know businesses in Niagara, from the tourist attractions to the wineries, have been suffering. Could you give us a state of the nation of Niagara right now?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, Jocelyn. And I think Adrienne is bang on. We're all being affected by this, and now it's kind of the boomerang effect, and we're waiting to see what's going to happen. But what we do know is Niagara Falls is the #1 leisure destination in Canada. And typically we get 14 million people here every year, and 40,000 people count on tourism in Niagara to feed their families. So when people ask if tourism is important, I tell them it's right up there with oxygen. It's essential. People have mortgages and rent and car payments and a lot of important things to save for and to pay. They need tourism to work. So we need everybody rowing the boat together. And we all understand we had to do everything in a safe way. We encouraged everyone to get their vaccines, to follow provincial protocols. As a matter of fact, in Niagara Falls, we went above and beyond. We brought in epidemiologists in the tourism sector, and we created safetoplay.ca and safetostay.ca, where we made people feel safe. And I can tell you, although we do get the lion's share of tourists, we never spiked above average of any other area. We were always in the mix because we understood, what did he say? Brush the teeth you want to keep. We wanted to make sure the tourism teeth were nice and clean.
Well, and that's great. You've done a great job of that. Now, Adrienne, we just got about a minute left. How do we get out of this COVID hangover? People are clinging to their masks. They're afraid to venture out because, unlike other jurisdictions where they imposed restriction and then went back to normal, we've been in a steady state of this for 2 years. Very different from the United States, where there are few restrictions at all. So, Adrienne, how do we get out of this? What's the path forward in about 30 seconds?
I think we need to stop scaring the public. I think that there needs to be the TV doctors and all of those people that have been have gained notoriety over the last couple of years. Stop scaring the public. We've done everything that we've been asked to. We locked down, we isolated, we vaccinated. We need to move on, and we need to live with this and move forward. Those voices that are saying that need to be louder and more and pronounced further, versus this fear that we are, going into the sixth wave and we need to take extreme reaction again.
So
Stop
I'm
scaring the public.
100% with you, but we're going to have to take a quick break. You're watching Canadian Innovators, and we'll be right back. What steps can we take to get people back to normal?
First thing I do is echo Adrienne's comment. We need to hear more from the medical professionals about moving forward. We did everything right. Experts like Dr. Zane Chagla at McMaster, we need to hear from these types of people who are telling us it's okay. We've done all that we can do. It's time to start living life. I can tell you the other thing, Jocelyn, is the border. We still have the requirement of the ArriveCan app. And with 1 million snowbirds returning to Canada, I can tell you, I've heard from so many snowbirds and locals, and a lot of them are seniors, not all of them, that are very frustrated. Not all of them have cell phones. Some of them have flip phones. Some of them have not bought into the technology. And I can tell you, I spent quite a bit of time with a gentleman the other day in his 80s, and he's very, very frustrated. He said, we have done everything diligently. He said, I can prove I'm Canadian with my passport. I can prove my vaccinations and my boosters. He said, why are you forcing me to have a digital device to upload something that's beyond my comprehension? He said, he's so angry. He said, it's not making us safer, it's making us more frustrated. So I think we need to make sure we're listening to the boots on the ground, listening to our customers, our constituents, and what they're telling us. They're telling us there's a labyrinth of rules and regulations. It's time to simplify it for locals and for the traveling public.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I've spent time helping my mom with her phone when she's traveling, download the ArriveCan app. And she's in her 90s. They don't have the technical literacy. So I love your idea. Let's listen to our constituents because they're our customer. Adrienne, I'm going to go to you. Let's talk about the effect of the economy, devastating debt and inflation. People are not wanting to return to the workplace, some of which because they're fearful. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, we've heard this notion of the so-called great quit, and I often sort of wonder, where are these people going? And what different opportunities are they going to? But to be clear, there are many businesses that have had to pivot to that sort of work from home, that hybrid model going into the office. I certainly know that many businesses that we're in touch with, they have made every provision, every proviso, very safe environment for their employees to return to, but you're not seeing the uptick that would require it to be quote unquote back to normal. So I think that businesses have to be responsive to their employees, recognizing that after 2+ years in an environment where they have worked from home, they've still performed, they've still made their metrics, they've still measured up and done their job. It's going to be difficult to get them back into the office every day. So employees have to recognize there's got to be a balance there. But with respect to the overall Canadian economy, we have a federal budget that's coming up in about a week's time. And we're probably going to see significant revenue increase, more money than the federal government certainly was expecting. And so what is it that they're going to do with that? We are seeing record high inflation levels. We are seeing Canadians' dollars being stretched in every manner possible. The war in Ukraine has put a significant impact on our oil and gas. And so all of these big issues come down to how will the Trudeau government deal with the economy moving forward? Will they pay down some deficit? We're over $1 trillion in debt now in this country. And so will they just spend unabated? Will they curb some of that and let entrepreneurs and let our business communities do what they do best, and that's create jobs?
Yeah, certainly when we see unaffordable energy impacting manufacturing, that's just a killer. When you're putting gas in your car and you're looking at your heating bill, all very impactful on the bottom line for both individuals and business. Mayor Diodati, on April 1st, fully vaccinated people will be able to travel into Canada without a COVID test. What's this going to mean to business in Niagara?
Well, I don't think it's going to mean a lot early on. I think it's going to be a gradual easing in, like getting into a hot bath slowly. And I think people are going to have to climatize, because I can tell you, I'm in touch with a lot of American mayors and people on both sides of the border. Like a lot of people live along the border. I've got family on both sides, and it's been very, very frustrating for business and for individuals who have missed important events, weddings, funerals, and things like that. And I really think so many people are coming to me saying it's confusing. There's so many rules. And you know, the traveling public are a lot like water. They'll take the path of least resistance. And that's my concern, that many will bypass Canada this year because we've been slow to react and we haven't been listening as much as we should. So it's my concern that it's not going to be a major comeback. Thankfully, we do have programs like the staycation tax credit that the Ford government have come out with that has had an impact. And I can tell you the bit of good news here, and prior to the border opening up, we had a very good Family Day weekend, Valentine's weekend, and spring break. In fact, our spring break was busier than 2019, and that's been mostly domestic. So if we can get the US trade back, which typically represents 50% of our revenue, that'll really impact and help us dig out of this big hole that we've dug for the last 2 years.
Adrienne, let's talk about government policy with COVID-19. How do you see this as playing a role on this COVID hangover, and what would you have done differently in retrospect?
If we go back to March 2020, when this all started, it seems like a lifetime ago. And the application of various rules, be it the distancing, the lockdowns, who can go where, the amount of people you can have in your home, the amount of people you can see on your doorstep or whatever. The general consensus is the application of the rules was uneven and it was very confusing. And I think one of the biggest issues I had, and certainly from our reporting on this, was we made people suspicious of each other. You know, you had neighbors sort of ratting out other neighbors that have 6 people over there instead of the stated 5. And I think it's going to take time for society to recover from that. So now that we're back in 2022, and there's a provincial election on the horizon, a very important one, I don't anticipate that we're going to see any more lockdowns. We're not going to see any more restrictions. If anything, we'll see a complete elimination of anything that's left. So that's a positive thing. But I think it's easy to armchair quarterback a lot of these things. This was unprecedented. The governments are not prepared for this, even though SARS did teach us a lot. And certainly with the Ford government's reaction in the first sort of phase, first 1 and 2 lockdown, you know, Doug Ford could do no wrong. But by the time we got lockdown number 3, things were going really sideways. And so the government has some recovery to do on that in terms of how they handled it. Announcing one day they're not going to lock down, and then the next, literally 3 days later, announcing they are going to. Very frustrating for parents, for the school divisions, for businesses, and the beleaguered business sector. So consistency was a problem. And what would I have done better? Well, I don't know what I could have possibly done better. You know, I'm in the media, and so, you know, we're there to criticize, but and unfairly or not, I think that there should have been, at the very least, far more of what we call show your work, why the rationale behind some of the actions that they took.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the government had a pandemic plan. They didn't follow the pandemic plan. They didn't show their work, and that leads to distrust. And we're still seeing some inconsistencies, especially you have to have a COVID test to fly into the United States, but you can drive into the United States with your COVID. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't. There's no consistency of rules. But Mayor, I'm going to go over to you. Niagara Falls absolutely has been impacted. So talk about your priorities for bringing the economy back in the Niagara area.
Well, we were devastated, no question about it. We're grateful to come out of this. And I will say, you know, resilience is built in our DNA. We've dealt with everything from 9/11, H1N1, SARS, mad cow, currency fluctuations, COVID. We always bounce back because we have to. And it's hard to not be heavily involved in tourism when you live right next to one of the great natural wonders of the world. And I often joke, I say, we're the Coca-Cola of municipalities. I've been all over the world. I've never met a person yet that doesn't instantly know Niagara Falls. So we have to be successful in tourism. And I think part of it is not taking such an insular approach to this. I mean, people die every day in cars too. We don't ban driving in cars. We come up with a safe way to drive them, seat belts and airbags and speed limits and whatnot. So in this case too, we got to look not just at the physical health, the mental health, the financial health. They're all tied together. It's like cursing your arm. It's all part of the same body. And a lot of people are struggling, and it's going to be a while. A lot of people have PTSD around this, and they're going to suffer from this. So I think it's really important that we focus on what they can do to be as safe as they can be, because let's face it, life is a liability. None of us get out of it alive. And I can tell you firsthand, 3 years ago, I had cancer. So I was and am immunocompromised. And I also agree, you've got to live life. I mean, do all that you can do to be safe, but then live life.
I agree with that and everything you said. You know, my 90-year-old mother did not stop traveling because she said she never knows when her last day is going to be, and she's going to enjoy it. And I think we need to get back to enjoying life. Adrienne, the Toronto Sun published a great article last week, Enough with the Panic, Lifting of the Mask Mandates is Gone Just Fine, written by Anthony Furey. Give us your thoughts on this article in the 30 seconds we have left.
I think it's very important that more of that type of language is penetrating through the public, because I think that's where the public is. It seems to be certain segments of our population want to continue with that notion of fear and keeping us, we're far easier to govern when we're locked down. I think and the public is revolting against that. There will be no more tolerance, I believe, for any type of additional measure or even restrictive measure that impedes upon our life. And like the mayor said, moving on and living with this. So I think that just overall, that narrative is so important because I believe that's where the public already is.
Well, amen to that. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back on Canadian Innovators. We're back, and with me today is the Mayor of Niagara Falls, Jim Diodati, and the Editor-in-Chief of the Toronto Sun, Adrienne Batra. Our topic today is the cure for the COVID hangover. Folks, this is the time that I put my guests on the hot seat and I ask them, if you were the Premier or the Prime Minister, what were the 3 things you do to preserve jobs and grow the economy and innovation in Canada? So let's start with you, Mayor.
Well, first thing I'd say is that's a thankless job and it's impossible to make everyone happy. But what I would say, the number one thing as a former entrepreneur of 25 years before I got into politics, I'll tell you, let business people run business. Stay in your lane, do what you're good at. And I always say that here municipally. We just create the garden. We make sure it's fertile and it's tilled. We let business come and plant the seeds and take care and deal with the harvest. That's our role. We shouldn't be in business. We should be supporting business in any way possible. And that includes listening to our customers, listening to the business people. They will tell us, they're in no uncertain terms, what they need us to do. And most of the time it's stay out of the way. And I will say, grateful for all the help financially businesses received during COVID, because without that, there would have been a lot more bankruptcies. So we're grateful for that. But at the same time, just listen to your frontline people. We'll give you the answers. And I'll tell you, the business people, they're the ones that should run things. We know that the majority of the economy is made up of small and medium-sized business. Let them do their thing and we'll be successful.
Adrienne, what say you?
On the federal front, the first thing I would do is tear up the NDP Liberal Coalition agreement. Whatever it is that they have decided upon is going to be unbelievably eye-watering costs to Canadians and very inefficient. The second thing, of course, is my message to Prime Minister Trudeau would be stop dividing us so much. Stop being so divisive. This is time in our nation and around the world when we need to come together. We have very significant international issues that we're dealing with. And on the economy, the mayor has already talked about allowing innovators and entrepreneurs to do what they do best with government staying out of their way. I couldn't articulate that even better. But with respect to what we have coming up in the federal budget, don't bring up the spending. Go back to even pre-pandemic levels in terms of the spending. Today's debts are going to be tomorrow's taxes. Let's not burden the future generations with so much of that debt load. And from the provincial front, with respect to Premier Ford, as I said, he's in election mode. He's going into a campaign in earnest that's begun. He needs to go back to why it was he was elected to as Ontario Premier in the first place. And I think that will take him a long way. He benefits from a very ineffectual opposition. And so as he is likely going to be reelected, go back to those roots about why Ontario needs to be put back on financial track.
Absolutely. Mayor, we still have the ArriveCan app. Can you talk to us about the effects on the economy?
Well, it's very frustrating because it doesn't make us any safer, but it definitely chokes off tourism and the traveling public. That's a $105 billion industry in Canada. And we're being supported by the travel sector, the Chambers of Commerce, the National Airline Alliance. We're being supported by the duty frees. We're all on the same page saying Why would you put more red tape in front of anything? Remove the red tape. Let's make things efficient and streamlined so it's easy to cross the world's largest undefended border. I think right now it's frustrating. It's been 2 years. We understand why it happened in the first place. We don't understand why it's in place now. It's a simple decision to move the red tape. And again, if it made us safer, we'd understand. It doesn't. It makes us less safe because when people can't pay their bills, they become desperate. And you don't want people to be put into a desperate state, especially after the last 2 years that we've been through. Niagara Falls offers a buffet of fun and excitement. There's something here for everyone. We need everyone to enjoy it, including our American traveling public.
With you there, let's get rid of the red tape. Adrienne, I'm going to give you a last word in the 30 seconds we have left. They're talking about a sixth wave of COVID. Shanghai is locked down for people, for the most part, have mild symptoms or are asymptomatic. What does the future hold for Ontario?
My concern is that we are usually 3 to 4 weeks behind what happens in China and in Europe, and that there is going to be this desire and hue and cry for us to lock down again. Premier Ford needs to resist that. Prime Minister Trudeau needs to resist that. Canadians have done everything that we have been asked to do, including getting our boosters, and we need to move on, live with it, and treat this as an endemic.
Let's get on with it. Well, that's all the time we have for today. My thanks to my guests, Mayor of Niagara Falls, Jim Diodati, and Editor-in-Chief of the Toronto Sun, Adrienne Batra. I'm Jocelyn Bamford. Thank you for watching Canadian Innovators. If you're an innovator, tell us your story. Write to us at CanadianInnovators@thenewsforum.ca, and we'll see you next time.